Okay, so good evening, everybody. Welcome to the at Surrey Dietetics Let's Eat Live Chat Series 2, Episode 4. And tonight, I've got a very special episode. And I say it's very special because first, I managed to actually invite three who are considered as the three high-profile dietitians in the UK to join my chat. And second is obviously this is my last episode, at least for now, for this series. And so two very special reasons. And my name is Long Lee, and I am a lecturer in dietetics at the University of Surrey, and this series host as well. And as I just said, I've got three very special guests tonight. And before I started the chat, I sent them a very challenging request because I asked them to send me a short bio of them. And I think how they managed to do a short bio, because none of their bio is actually short or should be short, really. So I will try my very best to introduce them. So first one is on the top right-hand corner is Susan Price. Now, Susan graduated from Robert Gordon's University in Aberdeen in 1995 and started her career at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. And throughout her dietetic journey, she has undertaken a variety of clinical roles, including oncology, burns, renal, sports, nutrition, and research, before advancing to the position of Head of Nutrition and Dietetics. She currently serves as the Deputy Director for Inclusion, Health and Wellbeing and Social Cohesion at the University Hospitals Birmingham NHS Foundation Trust, as well as being the Chair Designate for the BDA. With 28 years of practice behind her, Susan remains dedicated to the dietetic profession and its diverse opportunities, with the intention to continue working until retirement. And that is a very impressive resume, Susan. And on my bottom left-hand corner, probably your bottom right-hand corner, is Dr. Anne Holdoway. And I have to say, Anne's definitely one of my favorite dietitians at all time. And so are Susan and Rhys. So Anne is a dietitian with 35 years of experience holding leadership roles in medical nutrition, NHS dietetics, private practice, and research. She now combines teaching and consulting with her practice, specializing in nutrition for long-term conditions with expertise in various clinical areas. She is active in professional organizations such as the BDA and the British Association of Parenteral and Enteral Nutrition, BAPEN, and an advocate for nutrition's role in healthcare, and contributes to numerous publications and speaks globally. She is editor of Complete Nutrition and chair and clinical lead for the Managing Adult Malnutrition in the Community National Panel, which creates free resources for healthcare professionals and patients. Her significant contributions have earned her multiple accolades, including the prestigious BDA Fellowship and BAPEN's John Leonard Jones Medal. And that's very impressive, Anne, obviously. And finally, but the last but not least, our very proud Surrey graduate, Rhys White. And so Rhys has graduated from the University of Surrey in dietetics in 2004. And he's now the Head of Nutrition and Dietetics at Guy's and St Thomas NHS Foundation Trust in London, managing a diverse team of nearly 200 staff across multiple specialities. Previously, Rhys was the principal oncology dietitian at Guy's Hospital, and he led a dietetic team serving various tumour groups throughout the cancer pathway. His academic achievements including completing an NIHR-funded Masters of Research in Clinical Practice at St George's University in 2015, and conducting research on cancer cachexia and classification and its effect on palliative chemotherapy in lung cancer patients. Active within the professional community, Rhys contributed as a committee member of the BDA's Oncology Specialist Group from 2015 to 2018 and has been imparting knowledge as a tutor on the PENCH Clinical Update course since 2011. And he was actually my tutor as well when I was doing the course, everybody. And Rhys co-authored the refeeding section in the 2018 PENCH Clinical Pocket Guide, and this underscores his interest and expertise in refeeding syndrome. So welcome, three of you. I'm so excited. And I just said before I joined the chat, I actually said to Susan and Anne, is how on earth I set myself the challenge to do 1 hour chats with three of you, because each of you actually can have your own sort of chat show with me and probably for 1 or 2 hours and just talk about your career. So we'll see if I can manage to do this just within this hour. Now, I just read your resume and very impressive. But obviously that's just an overview. So I'm just wondering if you can just briefly tell us about your current role and what your day-to-day responsibility entail. If I can go with you first, Susan.
Yes, of course, Long. So just checking you can hear me okay before I start.
Yeah.
Lovely. Fantastic. So my current role is I'm the Deputy Director for Health and Wellbeing and Inclusion at the NHS Trust that I work in. And prior to that, I was the Head of Nutrition and Dietetics at University Hospitals Birmingham. But my role currently is about looking on how we look after our staff in the NHS. And I think that's something that's so important. We're really good as dietitians. We're really good in the NHS as healthcare professionals of looking after other people, and we've got to look after ourselves as well, because we know if we look after ourselves, then we're going to be able to look after our patients better as well. And then the other part of my job, which is a huge passion of mine, and one of the reasons that I volunteered to be the co-chair of the EDI committee of the BDA is that I'm really passionate about having an inclusive, a diverse workforce that really feel that they belong. So that's the other aspect of my role, is about on all parts of protected characteristics that we ensure that everybody is included in the organisation and that they feel that they belong.
That's excellent, and I cannot wait to hear about more of your experience about inclusion and how we encourage diversity, particularly in the dietetic profession, and that's very good. Thank you so much, Susan. And let's come to you, Anne.
Okay, you can hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think from what Long was saying about my career is probably still true today, that it's very much described as a portfolio career now. I used to say it was a bit of a mishmash until Lucy Jones said to me, Anne, describe it as a portfolio. It sounds much more professional. But yeah, just to take today, for example, I did some virtual consultations on a private basis with patients with gastroenterology conditions. So I'm still very much grounded and involved with patient care. I was then reviewing some articles for our next Complete Nutrition, which comes out, I think, in about 2 weeks' time, the final one this year. I was preparing my Pennington lecture for BAPEN, and I've also been signing off materials for the Managing Malnutrition Pathway. We've just done an update on COPD, so we're just awaiting endorsement from the Royal College of General Practitioners, but we've now got endorsement from 9 professional bodies. So I was working on that too as well. So yeah, quite a varied day. Sometimes I just find it's a bit of a juggling act, but no day is the same really. But that's what I really enjoy.
Yeah.
So that's just an example really. And I was also checking through the app, because we've got BAPEN next week. So I was checking through that the app that we've just launched today for all BAPEN delegates contains all the relevant information and was all functioning. So we just had a few tweaks to do on that. So yeah, and we've got 700 delegates for BAPEN next week. So I've been involved in the programmes, organising the programme, as well as I'll be chairing events and doing a couple of presentations there myself. So yeah.
And such a busy day, Anne. And obviously, as you just said, you are going to chair a few sessions and also to speak at Bakeman. And that's how I actually got to know Anne. Is obviously I was the audience and she's the chair, and I had listened to quite a few of, not just quite, even over 10, I think, of your speeches, and they are always very, very inspiring. And I think that's why you just climbed the ranking to be one of my favorite dietitians. Just so inspiring, and thanks so much for that information. And let's come to you, Rhys, my Pench and tutor. And what would be your typical day like managing such a huge department in probably one of the largest hospital in the country?
Yeah, gosh, it's a typical day. I'm not sure there is such thing, but I think my role doesn't really involve much clinical work anymore. So I guess I have taken the route of going down a much more kind of management role. So much of my responsibilities, are around the operational and the clinical delivery of our services. So, from things like, quality and governance meetings, finance meetings, to HR side of things. So varied, but all much more around kind of the oversight of a large multi-professional department. So we're mainly, of that 200 staff, that's about 130 to 150 are dietitians, and then we've got lots of dietetic assistants, administrative team, and we've got some psychologists and physiotherapists within our department as well.
Wow!
And typically, the thing I'm trying to do is talk to somebody about giving us more money for something. That's often where I am.
Has that been quite successful then?
I mean, it's been successful over the years, but I think it might become a bit harder over the coming months and years. I think for sure.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think, and you said you just launched a new system recently, and that has made you really, really busy, hasn't it? And hope that has become slightly calmer now. And so thank you so much, Rhys and Susan. And obviously, for three of you, and I just read your resume, and combined together, actually calculated over 80 years experience in combination. I was like, oh my God. And so I just wondered, how has the field of dietetics changed since you began your career? And where do you see the field of dietetics heading in the next decade?
I'm happy to kick us off if that's okay. So I think for me, like I say, you said long, I graduated in 1995, and for me, I feel that where we've changed is that we've really, really now grown in our own professionalism in terms of our how we can put the dietitian at the front. It's not a case, perhaps, whereas I felt quite early on in my career, it was perhaps in some ways implementing things that other people had asked us to do. And that's very much what I'm talking about within the NHS just there now. Whereas we've had such amazing things of advanced clinical practice, consultant roles, which has really, really, I think, promoted the role of dietetics. But outside of the NHS, I think it really has as well. So throughout my career, I've done some private work within sports, within research, and just that growth of where dietitians can work, I think, and that real expansion of where we can work is absolutely there. So while I'm a deputy director working in inclusion and wellbeing, I still practice as a dietitian. I'm 100% still a registered dietitian and always will be. So I just think it's opened. There are more doors that are opened in some way for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think, Anne?
Yeah. For me, I mean, very much my career has been dedicated to managing long-term conditions, as you said, long in the introduction. And what's particularly noticeable over the last 30 years is the complexity of our patients. So I'm thinking about anybody going into clinical dietetics now, whether it's freelance or private practice or the NHS, various settings, really. I think you no longer just get a patient who's referred for one medical condition. We know we've got an aging population. We've got, I think, the average number of medications 50-year-old plus people are on is like 3 medications. So we've got this increasing complexity. Lots of our patients will have comorbidities. So whereas before we might have seen a patient and you would be advising about diet and diabetes, I think now it's more commonplace. You'll get a patient with cancer who's got, COPD, diabetes, they've got a, poor metabolic health. And as a dietitian, therefore, we've got to juggle all of the advice to work out how we tailor the right information for them at that point in their life or at that phase in their sort of journey, in their sort of care journey. So that for me is the thing that I've noticed in particular. I think the second thing, as well as the complexity, is, and it's building a little bit on what Susan was saying about that sort of working with others, supporting others, how our role has expanded, is that, and particularly again in relation to disease-related malnutrition and chronic disease management, is the importance of looking at nutritional needs across the continuum of care, and actually how we might need to expand our expertise to measure and understand the outcomes that are important to our patients. And to just give our listeners an example to that, I think there's, with patients who have disease-related malnutrition, you might be thinking of cancer patients or those with COPD. I think, it's really important as dietetic practitioners now that we provide the advice around good nutrition, around protein to try and help retain and synthesize muscle, but that's got to go hand in hand with the resistance activity. So now what we see is not just taking on advanced roles as a dietitian, like confined to our actual skills, but perhaps developing skills that we'd see amongst other practitioners. So I think there's a little bit of blurring of lines, and there's no reason why we can't all work together and adapt skills and adopt skills of other professionals.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember recently I've just visited one of my students on placement, and she's like, "Oh my God, long, because at uni we so focus on one condition at a time." And then she said, at first week she was overwhelming because of the complexity of the patients, not just one condition, as you just said, Anne. And I think the other thing, as you said, we think of the new programs such as the prehab, and where we have to work together with other professionals. And I think it's not, I think it's very, very unusual that we can address a thing just with diet, basically. So it has to be from a multi-professional point of view. And I think that's what you said here, and we can learn from each other and work together to improve patient care, definitely. And what do you think, Rhys?
Yeah, I mean, similar themes to the others. I think one of the biggest things that strikes me is the diversity of roles that now exists than, when I graduated in 2004. So I think there's a lot more opportunity, and, we've mentioned advanced practice roles, first contact practitioners. And I think we are recognised as a profession that can deliver some of these things, although we are still sometimes an afterthought in those things, and we have to, again, shout and fight to get access to that pot of funding, which might come easier to our physio colleagues sometimes, for example. But I do think there is a much greater diversity, and we certainly, if I look at Guy's and St Thomas's over the last 10 years, certainly the biggest expansion of our services have come across the community. And then the NHS has been talking for 30 years about moving more into the community and out of the acute, but it's been slow at really doing that. But I do feel that shift is happening more now. And then I think the other thing is technology. So both in terms of how digital is part of our pathways, apps, etc., but also obviously COVID and the fact that we do so much virtually now, and the way that we deliver our dietetic care has perhaps changed, particularly because of COVID, but also I think just because digital transformation and the opportunities that exist for us as a profession to incorporate some of that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think particularly with technology you just mentioned, obviously we have more advanced artificial intelligence now, and I think, ChatGPT, for example, where you can, type a lot of dietary information in it and it can answer you. And I think in the future, perhaps the AI will play even more part in sort of the dietetic assessment or even triage, I think. But we see in this, but I think on the other hand, as dietitians, I read the other day, it says dietitians probably is one of the professions that's unlikely to be replaced by AI. But I think that's put even more emphasis on our human touch, really, when working with patients and how we utilize our empathy and the communication skills to really empower that change. And I think that's what AI cannot replace with. And I think even as an educator, we should even put more emphasis on those kind of motivational interviewing, behavior change, and communication skills training for our students. So thank you so much. And then I just realized, everybody, and I've been really bad host because obviously tonight's thing is leadership. I didn't mention that at all at the beginning. So tonight we're focusing on leadership tonight in our thing until I saw my next question, because I was just so excited to start to chat with my guests. So obviously my next question is about leadership, and we always talk about the importance of leadership. And obviously, I've been a dietitian for probably 7 or 8 years now, and I've seen quite a lot of dietetic managers, or just in general managers, or we see leaders. And sometimes I was wondering, how come they can be a manager, or how come they can be a leader? And I think they probably would just be better at being led by someone else and give that opportunity to someone else. So I'm curious about your perspective, really. Is it really essential for everyone in dietetics to have those leadership skills, or is it also effective just have team members who are just good at being led? And what do you think? Anyone like to start?
I don't mind kicking this one
up.
So we've all got a lot to say on this, yeah.
I mean, I do think that all dietitians have to have some level of leadership skills, and I think if you break that down and look at what leadership skills are, can you motivate others, can you organize others, can you support and communicate with others, they're all just important basic skills, I think, that many allied health professionals, but in particular dietetics, require. I think what there is then is a spectrum at which you might need to apply those, the level at which you apply those skills. So, I think someone that is going to, train a student, or, undertake an audit, or to prepare a diet sheet, all those things will involve elements of leadership skills. You have to coordinate potentially a little team to share those tasks with you. You have to give a student some positive and some potentially critical feedback. And, so I think all that is leadership, but that doesn't mean that everyone needs to, be the head of dietetics at an organization, or that's a different level of leadership, which doesn't suit everybody. I'm not sure it suits me most of the time either, but so I think it's about the spectrum and the percentage of your job that is focused on those elements. But I think to some extent, every dietitian needs some of those core basic skills of leadership.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's so important, is leadership is not just about leading people, but to say, if you are within a team as the only dietitian and MDT, of how you advocate nutrition for the patient and how you advance the dietetic service within that team, perhaps needs leadership skills, I guess. And I think definitely so it's not just about managing or leading people, although that's many times, or most times, we think it's just about that. And you said, you have so much to say about this, so I think I'll move to you next one.
Well, I think, it's interesting, isn't it? I don't manage people now, except, I manage projects, which means managing people. And really, it's about what Rhys was saying. It's there's a whole combination of skills that you require to be a good leader. And I think it's important to remember that you don't have to be a manager to be a leader, and you don't have to be a leader to be a manager, vice versa. Certainly within the NHS and within various organisations, I've experienced very sort of bureaucratic, patriarchal type of cultures, and the NHS has certainly been accused of, being a very patriarchal top-down culture. But I think if you look at any successful organisations, then good leaders will encourage involvement and participation from everybody right across the spectrum. And that's not just in healthcare, that's in people, places like Google. Often, Google's success was very much, it was led by a woman, a very big organisation, but she always took on board ideas from every level of the organisation. And so for me, leadership, as Rhys said, is really crucial, no matter what level you are at in dietetics. And, I think back about to my career and starting as what was a band 6 dietitian in Bath, and very much felt we needed a nutrition support team. And I thought, well, my manager's not going to do this, so I'm going to have to find a way of doing it, which led, to an audit to look at PN, parental nutrition infections, which led to a business case, which went to the chief exec, and I had to get my manager on board and supportive. But I had a whole team around me, a nurse, a gastroenterologist, a pharmacist, and an anaesthetist, who, through the collaboration, resulted in the success of the nutrition support team developing, and that was 30 years ago. So I think, that's at a band 6 level, thinking about how you can lead in your area that you're working in. And then, as you say, leadership can also take, many guises, including leaders who are managers. But I think it's a skill we should all learn. And, I think there's many skills that dietitians inherently have that you can build on to become good leaders, which is things like, being a good listener and being empathic and compassionate, and creating an environment where you get people to buy into your, the shared goal. And that's when things really come together and happen. And that's what I believe.
Definitely. And I think, just reflecting on my experience in the NHS, is many of the dietitians, band 5, band 6, who I thought was really good, was their ability to actually see that need for change. And not just to see it, but also then they took initiative to actually implement whether or not a service evaluation and audit to actually push that change, basically eventually made that change. So I think everybody needed that, and I think whether band 5, band 6, that's achievable basically. And I think moaning is good as a starting point, as to have something to moan about, but I think good people with sort of leadership skills or initiative will actually take that moan to the next step, is to do something to change it. And I think that's something definitely everybody can do. Is there anything, Susan, you'd like to add?
So, I mean, I totally agree, actually, with everything that Rhys and Anne have said. I suppose the only things I would add is that I do firmly believe that there is leadership in everybody. I really do. And whether that's because you're in a hierarchical situation, and Anne's just given a perfect example of how it doesn't have to be hierarchical, where you can still demonstrate your leadership skills. So I firmly believe in that. And I think the only other thing I will add is that I think a really good leader, and I think back to some of the fabulous leaders I've had within dietetics and the wider healthcare situation scenario, but also about what I try to embody, is that you bring out the best in everybody. Because a true leader knows that they don't have everything. A true leader knows that they don't have all of their skills. So what they will do is ensure that the team around them, that they bring out the best. We spend a lot of time talking about what people need to improve on, whereas actually, if we did quite an equal amount of focusing on what they're really good at, then we can really harness that. We can really then bring out the best in people. And I think that's one of the things as a leader, one of the many things as a leader that you need to do.
That's such a great point, actually, because I would like to say my current sort of head of service, she's so good at identifying people's strength, and I think that we actually boost staff's confidence really to want to actually do better. And I think that's quite important. Yes, we know we have weaknesses that we need to improve on, but equally, people have strength, and if we emphasize on that strength, then even people probably want to, improve their weaknesses as well if they have that confidence in themselves. So I think that's such a good point. And it sounds like, from each of you is saying that everybody can learn to be, a good leader at different level. It doesn't have to be organizational level. It just can be at a service level or just within your area. And I think sounds like in terms of the critical aspects is the ability to listen, the ability to work with others and see the need for changes, initiate that change, and also like the ability to empower other people and positively to and bring out their strength basically. And is there anything that you think is critical to effective leadership that you would like to add in?
I'm just going to say, Long, on that point, what you just described actually is a dietitian's skill set in your statement. And I think that was the point I made at the beginning. I think our core skills as dietitians actually, it's a good foundation to actually be leaders, where, whether that's empowering the individual patient to take on board that advice that you're providing and working with them on, or whether that's, supporting or coordinating others to lead a project. I think they're all fundamental parts of our training, which really, therefore, means that we all have that capacity, I think, within us.
Yeah.
And I'd just like to add as well that when you look at team and team working and collaboration, particularly within teams, within a working environment, it's really crucial that you sort of acknowledge and respect people's skill sets and personal styles. So, I think when you look at a team, you've often got, where you talk about the different types, the initiator, the person with the ideas, the sort of bee who's, the finisher. And you often need a blend of skills within a team. And it's, it's the sum of the parts can be greater than each part additively. Yeah. So, I think it's about looking at effective teams often have a blend of skills and a blend of personalities.
Yeah,
but it's then about the culture being, a sort of a good fit for all of the participants.
Yeah. And I feel like, Susan.
Sorry. And then the other thing I think with being that leadership is knowing when you have to make the difficult decisions. And, for the vast majority of people, making difficult decisions is something that we don't necessarily want to do. But actually, a good leader knows when they have to make those difficult decisions. They do it in a kind way. They do it in a compassionate way, but they will make those difficult decisions knowing that it's right for whatever the scenario is.
Yeah. And I feel like just listening to you guys, I feel like I've got so much I need to improve on in terms of my leadership skills. And I think, so I think I'm getting better than before now. I think I was such a dictator and want things in my way, literally, and either my way or highway. And but then I think now I learn slightly to be more collaborative. And everybody, do not quote me on this in the future if there's any complaint about me like being a politician or anything. This is not the evidence for that, okay? But that's so good. Now, thinking about just the leadership, actually, if we step into a leadership role, being a leader, and I think it can be daunting, especially if you're new to a leadership role, what would be the most important piece of advice would you give to someone who's new to leadership?
Okay, I'll kick us off on this. So, I think for me, what I have reflected on and learned as I've become a leader is about being really properly true to myself, not trying to change myself to fit into the hole that I think a leader should be or that what is expected of me. I spent too long, actually, if I'm really honest, trying to fit the mould that I thought a dietetic manager, for want of, leader should be. And it's probably taken me too long. And if there was one thing I would want to say to people is just, learn from that error I made. You are genuinely good enough. You are absolutely good enough. And if the processes have put you into that place, then then just be true to yourself. Don't try to fit yourself into some of the sort of hole that you think that you should be in. Your voice is absolutely needed and valued. And that can be a tough, lonely place in some scenarios, which, depending on time, I'm quite happy to explore a bit more on. But just be really true to yourself and bring your true self to that position.
Yeah. And I think being authentic is so important. And actually, I think I have been authentic in the way that I think that do make people like you or dislike you, and but I think that actually makes you more happy because you don't have to put on a fake face at work. And I think, when we're doing the staff survey, there's always a question about, do you think you can be authentic at work yourself, and that as an outcome measure, I guess, whether or not this organization is good in terms of the leadership. So that's absolutely a good advice, Susan, being authentic. And any idea from you, Anne or Rhys?
So I just wrote a couple of things down as Susan was talking, and I wrote being authentic. So there we go. That's a common thread here. I think the other thing is to always take time when you're in it. If you're particularly going into a new organisation or joining a new team, you've sort of, in a way, got to take the time to observe others, watch the interactions, suss out any politics. I've been in jobs where, within a week, within a leadership role and a management role, sitting down with the director saying, okay, what do you want to change? And you think, crumbs, I've only just got my foot through the door. And actually, to be fair to people, when you're joining a new organisation or a new team, they may have been doing things a certain way. Now, over time, you may think, there might be a better way to do this, but you've got to bring people along with you. So my key message would be, take your time to really suss out the situation, the people that you're interacting with, who the decision makers are, who the other leaders are, and as I say, the politics. And then the other key element I would mention about leadership is actually having a good role model or a good mentor. And that doesn't have to be somebody from your profession. I think as we've seen dietitians moving into primary care positions, they've got a bit worried about whether they've got a dietitian who's they can report to. But when I look across my career, I have learned so much from so many other people outside of our profession. And, not to confine yourself to just one mentor, there may be a number of mentors that you draw upon who can support you and guide you, so you can have those sort of more private conversations or advice when you have sticky situations, or just to bounce ideas off where you want to talk to somebody who's experienced, but who's sort of approach you want to emulate, really.
Yeah.
If you see them as a good role model. So they'd be my two key pieces of advice.
That's so good. So especially the role model one, I think that's I actually only realised the importance of a role model in recent years, and I think when I first qualified as a band 5, I just did whatever I wanted to do without actually proper supervision I can't say that, without proper having a role model there, and I think that didn't help me grow or learn. And later on, when I actually had good mentors, and I think that really helped me grow quite a lot. And I think this really just to learn of why they're so good, and then apply, how I can improve and how I can learn from them. But definitely. Anything from you, Rhys?
Yeah, I don't think anything different, but I'll just emphasize a few points. So, I was going to say, identify some support, right? What's your support structure? And that, that potentially your manager, but also a mentor. And, sometimes you can be lucky then your manager can serve as a mentor as well, but that's not always the case. So, it's looking, like Anne said, maybe outside the profession, or certainly outside your chain of management. And also, coaching as another way of helping you develop as a leader. It's accessing a coach, kind of running scenarios through somebody else and getting some advice and direction. And then I think my final point is, because sometimes, the others have alluded to this, sometimes there are difficult decisions to be made, but where they don't all have to be your decision, like utilize your team, get people to feed into those decision-making processes. Yes, in the end, you may be the one that has to make the final decision, but you don't have to come up with all the options on your own, and utilize your team to support you and the department or whatever else you're leading.
Yeah, so good. So everybody, let's see if I can summarize. So everybody needs to be authentic, have your voice heard, and your voice needs to be heard. And obviously take your time when you join the new leadership role and get to know the politics, get to know the team members, and then see if any changes are needed. And then, oh my God, my mind just gone blank. And obviously work with your team as well, and utilize your team, and you don't just need to make decisions on your own, and people can help you. So teamwork in there is very, very important. And yeah, and thank you so much. This is quite actually, and also having a mentor as well, a role model for you, and have some coaching if needed. Now, I just want to know if you have any unique leadership lesson you've learned in the dietetic profession, or any hurdles you have encountered in your leadership journey that you would like to share with us, or feel comfortable share with us.
Oh.
Yeah, Anne, you're smiling.
I'm just thinking there's quite a number. I'm happy to, be the sacrificial lamb here. I think there's lots of times when you might be tripped up. Talking about who's a good leader and listening to your team. So when I was working in the medical nutrition industry, I was the initiator. I just loved the sort of new projects. They really sort of gave me that passion, and sort of got me out of bed in the morning, just desperate to get to work, to get on with the latest project. And I was, often thinking about the next idea before we'd even finished the last one. And my deputy manager was very much a completer finisher. And I suddenly realized that our management styles and the way we managed our work was very, very different. And I thought, oh my goodness, this might all go pear-shaped. But I decided that we actually just needed to sit down and talk about our differences in our working styles and how we worked. And we had a very open and frank discussion. It could have all gone horribly wrong, but actually it was the most useful thing that we did. And that person and I have now gone on to work together in the freelance world. We've probably worked together now for the last 20 years. And it's been an amazing partnership. I think that time out that we literally took a day out of the office to go out of the office for an away day together, helped us to understand each other. So, that was a real learning experience for me when I was managing a big team, but this was the real crucial member of my team too, as the deputy manager. So yeah, it made me feel very humble, really. And it was that real reminder to think about the skills of others around you and how your style might influence how others work and how comfortable they feel. So it comes back to that, appreciating each other's styles. But I've probably got lots over my career. That's one. That's one.
And I think that's another important thing you said, is having that honest and genuine conversation with a colleague who probably, had, so say, if you have any issues or seeing any difficulty working together, having that honest conversation is so important. I remember the few such conversations I've had with my colleagues before, which had always helped with our working relationship. So I think that's quite important to have that, rather than just bearing it with yourself and not saying it. I think having that conversation can be helpful. And you're nodding, Susan. Do you want to contribute to anything?
No, I mean, I totally agree with that. I think another aspect that I'd like to bring in here is about making sure that you've got your own cheerleading team, making sure that you've got your own support network, because there are days where as a really good leader in dietetics, you have to make quite difficult decisions. You have to have conversations with either dietetic colleagues, dietetic students, dietetic support workers, the wider AHP, the wider healthcare, and equally within non-NHS roles, other people that you'd have to come across. And there are times where I've come out of a meeting and just thought, I got that really wrong. I got that really, really wrong. And I know that. And I know eventually I will learn from that and I will reflect and I will be able to do things differently. But in that point in time, you need to have some people who are going to professionally or literally pick you up, who are going to be there to give you that professional or literal comfort that you might need. And some of that comes from your self-belief that you know you can do that, but in that point in time, you just need to have that extra support. So I think make sure that you've got that good support network around you. And as we've already alluded to, some of that can come within dietetics, but equally it might come outside dietetics as well.
Yeah, very important. Like, you're not alone there as a leader, and obviously you've got your team, you've got your colleagues, and you need that support, don't you? And from now and then, especially during difficult times or when you're making very difficult decisions. Absolutely. And obviously, Rhys, you manage a huge team again, and I bet you have actually come across some very challenging situations before, haven't you?
Well, yes, lots. But I think the thing that I would say, though, in relation to, if I'm thinking about a leadership lesson, and I alluded to it earlier, it's this constant need to promote the profession and the services that we deliver. So even as a large department, we are still a very low profile profession in comparison to many others. And I think the thing that I've learned, and I'm not always that comfortable with it, when it comes to AHP days and Dietitians Week, it's sometimes easier not to, put all the effort into organising those things. But actually, what I've learned is that they are great ways of getting a bit of profile to your profession within your organisation, and sometimes wider. And we kind of went all out on Dietitians Week this year at Guy's and St Thomas's, and actually the amount of feedback that we then got and the amount of profile that we got from that was extremely beneficial to us. And I think that's one of the things, I think, as a profession, we're not always very good at, kind of the self-promotion bit. And it is really important, I think, for us to, to keep knocking on doors and to keep shouting about our achievements and our success, and finding ways in which we can highlight those achievements and successes, which aren't, sometimes you have to work out a route to kind of to raise that profile. And I think that's really important.
And absolutely, and obviously I have seen your Dietitians Week and activities at Guy's and St Thomas. I was so impressed by the sheer scale you actually have achieved during that week. And at one point I thought Joe Wicks did it for you guys. I remember that I commented under your tweet. But I think that's what you said was so important, and your sustainable garden as well, as a department you were doing, and obviously published that in Dietetics today. And I think that was, again, impressive. And I think one thing I always teach my students now is, we always the dietitians are good, but we need to let people know we are good. So we can't just say it, we need to let people know about it as well, whether or not that's through social media or through service evaluation and publish it. But in any way, we need to say that to promote the profile of dietitians. Thank you so much, Rhys, for that. And now let's come to this one. So obviously, I'll come to you, Susan, and as your role in the Director for Inclusion, Diversity and Social Cohesion is, and then I think the BDA has also set up a new EDI committee from this year. And obviously EDI has been, one of the key strategies in the next, I think, 5 or 10 years of the BDA strategy. What do you think of the importance of diversity and inclusion in the dietetic profession? And as a leader in dietetics, how do you ensure that your practice is inclusive?
No, absolutely. So for me, it's fundamentally important, absolutely important. And I truly mean that in the overall umbrella of diversity. I'm talking about diversity in terms of the protected characteristics that there are, diversity in terms of how we've actually entered the dietetic profession, diversity in terms of our support workers, dietitians, student dietitians, where you work, NHS, non-NHS. So it's that full umbrella of all of those aspects. And for me, to really deliver on whatever we are working on when it comes to dietetics, the more diverse your team is, the more collective thoughts you have, and therefore ultimately the better decision that you're going to have. So very briefly, because I am conscious of time as well, is that, you know, I wanted to be a dietitian since I did my GCSEs, and thank goodness for my parents that they really encouraged me, because when I was wanting to be a dietitian, from an ethnicity point of view, nobody looked like me. It was a world that I felt that I could not belong to. And one of the things I really want to see changed is that everybody, from all protected characteristics, from all areas that they want to work in, that if you're really interested in being a dietitian, that's something that you can achieve. Because if we do that, and if we absolutely achieve our ambitious goal as the BDA of reaching 20,000 satisfied members, I truly, truly believe that's going to deliver better for us as a profession. And I will stop there, Long, because I could go on for the next 9 minutes talking about this, because it is my area of passion.
And I would like to say, from a diversity point of view, obviously I worked in the north before and I moved down to London, and I did feel like I was happier in London, simply just because of the team was more diverse and, you know, people from everywhere. And I felt, you know, I was happy and I could contribute even more. So I think from that point of view, I think diversity is good. Just another quick thing is, since joining higher education, I've become more aware of neurodiversity and how that can affect students, and thinking of, you know, those, because I didn't know that at all when I was in the NHS. I thought everyone was fine, but then realizing, you know, the neurodiversity, now thinking those students graduate and they become dietitians, they still have the neurodivergent needs. But then I just felt at that time the NHS probably wasn't really doing enough for those, or maybe they were, but I didn't know at all. So I think that's something, sort of my new interest area is neurodivergent needs, not just for staff, but also for patients as well, how we support patients with neurodivergent needs. And I think that's such an interesting area. So sorry, I was just like doing a long monologue myself. And what do you think, and Rhys, on the diversity and inclusion?
I was just going to add. I mean, I completely agree with what Susan says. I think it enhances your workforce the more diverse that you have, and the different perspectives and experiences that different people can bring. I think how you ensure, I guess, that, you know, within the workplace, within the department that we work in, that we encourage and support that is trying to put, you know, what are those practical steps. So obviously this is quite high on most NHS trusts' agendas these days. So there's often organisational level initiatives around, you know, promoting ED&I. So in our department, for example, we have what our trust calls inclusion agents or ED&I champions. So it's about creating, I guess, an environment where people can talk about these things, people can raise concerns, people can challenge the leadership team or the management team and ask questions about our approaches. So I think that's one way. It's to, you know, try and, you know, encourage that open, honest conversation and not be afraid to sometimes get some difficult feedback from staff members. But then the other point is, and it was mentioned, is also about our patient group. So, you know, looking at how we tackle, you know, health inequities in our communities, and, you know, Guy's and St Thomas's serves South East London as a very diverse, multicultural community, and it's looking at, you know, how we design things differently, where we know that there is poor access to services. So we run a very large obesity service, for example, yet we know that certain groups engage far less with those programs than others. So looking at co-design, looking at tailoring interventions to groups and working with, so in South East London, that's often we've worked with our Black African and Caribbean population to co-design tailored weight management interventions. And we've gone out into the community and into church groups, into different environments, community centres, to try and understand how those populations want to interact with our healthcare services, and it meets their needs as opposed to the needs that we're used to perhaps setting out for them. And I think that's something that we need to see more of over time, is how we engage the populations to actually co-design these programs or these interventions that we want to deliver.
Most definitely. So yes, Anne.
Yeah, I think Susan and Rhys have covered so much there, and I think it is about being sensitive to others' needs, but realizing how diversity is so crucial. And I think we're still learning about this. I work in an area of the Southwest, which is very Caucasian, and I think, gosh, if I have a client coming in, if I don't know much about their culture and their food, then it is about being very open and receptive and exploring all of that. But equally, I think there's now lots happening within the dietetic profession to help us if we're in an area where we don't have much diversity in the department, we don't have many resources. There are now sort of dietitians very much coming back to our leadership topic, a leadership role in developing resources that are quite bespoke for specific cultures, or to support various translations. So I think it is that those specialist networks are so crucial in supporting us all to ensure we, fulfill our duties around diversity and ethnicity.
Yeah. Just one other thing that I'd like to add in there, sort of like bringing also back in with the leadership. It's about, as a leader, how you truly demonstrate proactive, upstanding allyship. That, I think, is so, so key. Acknowledging your own privilege. All of us have got privilege. All of us have got, in different ways, we've got privilege. But as a leader, when you acknowledge that, you acknowledge your privilege, you acknowledge your own biases, and you do something about both of those, and that you're a real advocate and a proactive upstander. And I know I've said that twice, but there was a reason for that, so that you can make sure that those voices that aren't represented within dietetics and whatever the wider organisation that you're in truly are.
Yeah, that's so important, of acknowledging our own privilege regardless of our background, and then hear of all the voices. And most definitely, that's such a good summary there and such a good point. And I cannot believe I'm looking at the time, I cannot believe the time has gone so fast. And I said it's a challenge to just have three of you and have 1 hour. And very quick question would be of what's the most rewarding aspects of your work in dietetics that keeps you motivated every day? If you just say one sentence to conclude that. Susan?
Oh gosh, right, okay. So for me, it's absolutely the individual patient, because I predominantly work in the NHS, individual patient change I can make, the overall nutrition and dietetic change that I make for my NHS organisation, the overall health and wellbeing and inclusion impact that I make for my colleagues, and due to my recent appointment as the BDA chair designate, what I plan and hope to do for my organisation going forward. That's what inspires me.
Thank you. And Anne?
Oh, yeah. Well, after 37 years in dietetics, I think obviously something's still motivating me, isn't it, to keep me here. But I think, like Susan, it's the patients. It's those individuals and families that we support. And I've worked in lots of areas like palliative care and neuro rehab and all these areas where, you know, people are dealing with incurable conditions and but it's where you make a difference, and your patients and families let you know that, and I must say they often do. But equally as well, the clinicians I work with, when they take a moment to either say to the patient or, you know, to say to me direct, what a difference you've made. And it's about using your skill set to make a difference for others, really. And those others might be our clients, our patients, or sort of people we support working in industry or new product development, lots of different areas. So yeah, that's what keeps me motivated. And I think the fact that dietetics is evolving as a career and as a profession, and our knowledge base is improving, that just keeps us on our toes. And you know, every day you learn something new.
Definitely, and new evidence keeps emerging as well. And yeah, definitely. And Rhys?
I think for me it's the opportunity to change, to make changes and to develop services. So obviously that in the end has an impact on our patients, but I think also the opportunity that sometimes creates for staff. So, you know, some of the things I get most inspired by, or, you know, most reward from, is where we've packed, you know, our first apprenticeship post and that's been advertised, or our first ACP post that's been advertised, and seeing the opportunities that creates for others as we kind of change and develop those posts and those services is what inspires me.
That's such a good point, especially, you know, from a leadership point of view and management point of view, of seeing those new opportunities that are out there and or get approved, and to be out there definitely keeps you going every day. That's a good point. And for us, to see those dietitians in those new roles, and then, you know, seeing them, you know, thriving really in new opportunities, that's absolutely a great way. And thank you so much for joining this chat tonight. And we've got so much more we can talk about, but then time obviously is limited. And hopefully I can have each of you, to be on my personal podcast. So everybody, I'm going to launch my own podcast at some point soon. So please do stay tuned. How can people find you on social media? Just last one. And Susan?
Oh, gosh, right. Okay. So I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm also on Threads, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, much to my children's utter dismay, and Snapchat. So you can find me on lots of different social media platforms.
And what's your handle?
Oh, so it's predominantly Susan Dietitian or Susan Price Dietitian. But when you post the video long, I can send you all of the different handles for all of those.
Excellent. And what about you, Anne?
Well, I'm a complete dinosaur, aren't I, on social media? I think I've said that before. I tend to be publishing papers and writing things and then think, oh gosh, this social media thing. Either the malnutrition pathway is a good way to get hold of me, because I work with a PR consultant on that, or through Complete Nutrition. I do have Twitter and Instagram, but I must say I don't look at it so often. But if you go through Twitter and either just go through the malnutrition pathway, that's a good way to get hold of me.
Excellent.
And it means you don't spell my surname incorrectly, because if you spell my surname incorrectly, you won't find me. Okay.
And obviously, if you go to different big conferences, you might actually see Anne in person.
Yeah, look out. We've got Bapen next week. I think there's 700 delegates. Come and say hello to me if you're there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what about you, Rhys?
For me, it's simple. It's Twitter, or X. It's Rhys White RD is my Twitter handle, and that's mainly where I interact from a professional perspective.
At Rhys White RD. Okay, thank you so much. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this chat. And thank you so much for your very insightful tips on this leadership topic, and obviously your personal stories as well. And I hope you all have a very nice evening. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.